In this video, you're going to meet Scott Chamberlain. He'll explain how he is using the grant money from Ripple and his active research with UBRI. UBRI is the Ripple University Blockchain Research Initiative, and specifically, he has been working on smart contracts. This all began at the same time as the Codius beta. Now, they found that Codius didn't do what they needed it to do for the smart contract component, so he built what's called hot pockets. And all of this grew out to be EVERNODE. How do smart contracts on the XRP ledger work? Well, he really knows. And they assumed hooks, which is the Xahau network now, would be adopted on the XRP mainnet. But as Scott says, it didn't pan out that way. It ended up being on a sidechain, the Xahau sidechain. And now he's all ready to go for a January 15th launch. They had 40,000 registrants for the airdrop. If you're receiving that airdrop, you're going to be really happy to learn how they made this for everyone at a zero value so that there is no tax consequence. Now, the next most important step for EVERNODE is about hosts. It's a decentralized architecture, and the second part of this video demystifies this process of becoming a host and the rewards you can earn. This starts at the 8-minute and 46-second mark. At the 24-minute mark to the final 37 minutes, Scott plays a video on 2 times speed of a screen capture of an actual EVERNODE host process. You're going to find this third portion of the video very helpful. All right, everybody, do enjoy.
For those who don't know, I'm Scott Chamblin. I'm one of the co-founders of EVERNODE. I'm actually an academic at the Australian National University. We're one of the initial UBRI partners, part of Ripple's University Blockchain Research Initiative. I've been there for 5 years now, doing research with the money, the grant generously provided by Ripple. I've been to almost every UBRI Connect since 2018. We used the Ripple grant principally to research smart contracts, and more specifically smart contracts on the XRP ledger. When UBRI was first announced, it was announced at the same time as Codius came, the beta version of Codius was released. And so the pitch that I'd made to be part of UBRI was about using the Codius XRP tech stack to do smart contract research. And that research was all about, you say smart contracts can do X, well, let's find out if that's true. Let's pick a use case, build a working toy, do what we can to try and prove whether that use case can be done technically and also legally. And the first use case that we targeted was decentralized identity. So we came up with a self-KYC solution on the XRP ledger. But what we found was that Codius didn't do what we needed it to do for the smart contract component. We ended up building a piece of software we called Hot Pocket, which was a smart contract engine using a UNL consensus mechanism. All of that grew out to become EVERNODE. So EVERNODE is the culmination of 5 years of research into how to do smart contracts on the XRP ledger. We ended up needing the hooks technology to be adopted as an amendment on the XRP ledger. And when we first started building EVERNODE, we were hopeful that that's how it would all end up. In fact, we'd assumed that hooks would be adopted on the XRPL. It didn't pan out that way. It ended up being on a side chain. And so EVERNODE has to go where hooks go, on the Xahau side chain. But the good news is that EVERNODE just needs to exist somewhere. And once it exists, it can be used for all kinds of things across all kinds of chains. It just needs somewhere to call home. We didn't want to launch our own layer one chain because we didn't have the capacity to be able to build everything that you need to do that, including wallets and explorers and all the other infrastructure that a layer one chain needs to function. And had we launched on the XRP ledger, then everything that we were doing would have been completely accessible to every wallet that that supports the XRP ledger. Given that we're launching on Xahau, we have to use wallets that are that support the Xahau ledger, and because Xahau is brand new, there's not many wallets that do that. And in fact, the only wallet that we're aware of that would do the full suite of activities is the Zum wallet, now Xammon. And so our airdrop had to be built around the Xammon wallet because it was going to be the only one that would support the full range of activities necessary to interact with the Xahau network. The update for Zum to support Xahau, that didn't come out until the 11th until the 18th of December. So we've delayed our launch until the 15th of January. We're all ready to go. People need time to download the new software and get used to it. I think last count we had nearly 40,000 registrants for the airdrop, and last count there's about 16,000 accounts created on Xahau. So I'm very glad we didn't launch on the 18th, because we would have launched into effectively dead air. Be very nice to have all 40,000 people bring their accounts across to Xahau before we launch. For those of you who've used the Zum wallet to go through that process, or the Xammon wallet, you'll see how painless it is to use. It's user friendly. It's nice and it's seamless, and it's enormous confidence that people can do it correctly and not get it wrong. Even I was able to do it without instruction, and I'm not the most tech savvy guy in the world. So hopefully everyone can be ready for the airdrop come 15 January, which is when we will launch. We are using the hooks technology in order to facilitate the launch. One of the complications with the XRP ledger is you can't send simultaneous transactions. Each transaction happens one after the other. So to send an airdrop to 40,000 people would involve 40,000 transactions. And when you start those 40,000 transactions versus when you finish, some people will have got their money early or their tokens early, and possibly will already have gone onto the DEX and sold them, or gone onto a centralized exchange and sold them. And that will give them a value. And so the people receiving the airdrop last, and there will be people like that, would receive tokens that already had a value versus people who received tokens that had no value. And somebody's got a tax consequence, and that's a little bit unfair. One of the benefits of how we can do it with hooks is we've programmed an airdrop hook where everybody who registered for the airdrop will have their EVERs inside effectively a lockbox in the hook, like a safe deposit box. And the only key to their safe deposit box is their address on Xahau, which they control the secret key to. So that's the key to unlock the EVERs that are inside the hook against their address. And so we can deposit the EVERs into the hook at a particular time, at the time when everyone gets their EVERs in the same capacity, before any EVERs have traded, before EVERs have any value whatsoever. And that minimises the risk that people have some unintended tax consequence. From our perspective, the moment the EVERs go in the hook, they're no longer ours. We don't control them. They are owned individually by each person who controls the keys against the addresses loaded in the hook. So hopefully that'll mean that the airdrop runs reasonably smoothly. And for people who come late to that process, their EVERs will just still be sitting inside the hook, effectively inside the locked deposit box, like it's just sitting inside the bank account ready for you to go and withdraw your money from it. You're just waiting for you to go and withdraw your EVERs from the hook. So that's what happened on the 15th. In between then, the most important thing for EVERNODE now is about hosts. So the EVERNODE network is a decentralized cloud hosting platform for dApps. And the more hosts you have on the network, the more valuable the network is overall. And so once the airdrop is out of the way, the crucial thing for us as an ecosystem is to have as many hosts on the network as possible. So what I'd like to do today is to talk a little bit about being a host, and then to show a short video that just tries to demystify this process and show some people just how kind of easy it is to run a host in terms of the setup process. So this is taken directly from the EVERNODE white paper, which is available from the evernode.org website. Just a quick talk about being a host. We've tried to make it as easy as possible for people to be a host. You will need a Xahau ledger wallet. Zum is the one at the moment that works. You need a real or virtual Linux machine. You need an internet, you need regular access to the internet and an IP address, and you need some technical savvy, right? It's unavoidable. This isn't simply just plug in a box. It doesn't suit laptops. It doesn't suit Raspberry Pis or anything like that. What you're doing is providing a machine that is providing a reliable internet connection so that people can upload software to it. And that software is designed to persist as a smart contract. And the last thing that you would want to do is upload your smart contract to a laptop that is sometimes connected to the internet, sometimes not, and travels around and regularly changes its IP address, and therefore hard to identify, all that sort of stuff. So it is, some sort of reasonable hosting machine that you're talking about acquiring or leasing in order to be a host. To facilitate your role as a host, you'll need a domain name, you'll need an email address and an SSL certificate before the registration will issue you a registration NFT. Now, these are just necessary things for you to be a good host. You're on a network, people need to be able to identify you, and this process of getting an SSL certificate, the other things kind of come along with that process. Why do you need an SSL certificate? Because if you don't have that, when people are using your machine, if a user is trying to access a dApp and it's connecting to your machine in order to do it, if it doesn't have an SSL certificate, you're going to get one of those weird internet pop-ups where it says this is not a trusted site and all of that kind of degraded user experience. So this is all about providing some kind of uniformly, not superior, but uniformly acceptable experience for people who are trying to access dApps that are running on your machine. We've now upgraded EVERNODE so it supports IPv6, meaning that each hosting slot can be given a unique IP address. It's not mandatory at the moment, but we highly advise that people adopt the IPv6. The problem is that this is reasonably unique architecture. What you've got is each machine is hosting potentially multiple instances of different dApps. And at some point, all of those dApps will need to connect to the Xahau network, right? Either to send a transaction or to pay some EVERs or do something based with the Xahau network. If too many instances try to connect to the same node on the Xahau network at the same time, that node will treat the host as being some sort of malicious attacker and could ban it from its network for a period of time. And you can run into this problem where the host gets banned, and so every every instance of a DApp that's running on that host now can't connect to the network, etc. And so IPv6 helps avoid all of that, because each of the DApp instances gets its own internet address, and so other services don't perceive the host as trying to attack it. It's getting a message from different addresses, which is important. The other thing that'll be near and dear to people who want to run hosts is the idea of hosting rewards. When you launch a network like this, you have this chicken and egg problem, which is that hosts will only exist if there's sufficient demand for hosting from dApps, and the developers of dApps will only build on Evernode if a vibrant and reliable network of hosts exists. What I keep saying is one of Ethereum's big benefits is that it exists. It's simply a network that if you want to do stuff with it, you can do it. And part of how Ethereum came to exist, and Bitcoin as well, was by having this mechanism of rewarding miners for being on the network through the network rewards. And so we've adopted that concept for Evernode. And there will be hosting rewards that are skewed towards early adopters. And so the way the reward works is every hour there is a hook with Evers in it, and every hour that hook distributes Evers equally to all the reliable hosts on the network. We distribute this in epochs. There's 5,160,690 Evers to distribute every epoch. In the first epoch, it will take 6 weeks to distribute those Evers, and we will distribute them at 5,120 Evers each hour. So every hour for the first 6 weeks, 5,120 Evers will be distributed equally to all of the reliable hosts on the network. And then once that's done, the next epoch starts, and that epoch goes for 12 weeks. And so the hourly rewards are halved. So now it's 2,560. And then the epoch after that, 1,280, etc. So we have this similar concept to the Bitcoin halving. That is done so that we're rewarding early adopters, right? That the sooner that you become a host, the more generous the rewards are coming from the hook. But it's also the case that the early hosts are also the most valuable. If there's only one host on the network and now there's two, well, that second host is far more important than if there's 1,000 hosts and then there's 1,001 hosts on the network, right? That next host is simply not as valuable as the earlier hosts. And so we are trying to incentivize people to become hosts, even though in the early stages there obviously won't be an enormous market for hosting services. It will take time for developers to come on board. We know that there are people developing on Evernode, but it will take time for those developments to come online. In the meantime, there's this reward schedule. So for those people who didn't participate in the airdrop, or who think that the airdrop didn't satisfy their appetite for Evers, there is this other mechanism, and this is the main mechanism for distributing Evers. This is our distribution of Evers, and you can see that by far the biggest proportion, 72% of all the Evers that will ever exist, are distributed to hosts as network rewards. So that is, it's not about the airdrop, it's about incentivizing hosts going forward. And so we're really trying to encourage people to investigate becoming a host on the Evernode network. What you earn in terms of Evers, who knows? What the Evers are worth, we don't know. The point is that this is the main mechanism the network uses to incentivize hosts to exist. In order to become a host, you do need to put some Evers on deposit. There's 500 Evers is the cost of being a host on the network. It's a deposit, a form of staking. And to acquire those Evers in the early stages, it will probably be necessary to buy those either from Bitrue or from the decentralized exchange that's on Xahau. But they're the two most likely places at launch that you'll be able to get your hands on 500 EVERs to become a host. Can you see this EVERNODE installation?
Yeah, it's very clear.
Okay. What I'm going to do now is play a video on 2x speed. This is otherwise 7 minutes of video. This is a screen capture of an actual installation of an EVERNODE host. And to do this, the bit that's missing here is you go to the EVERNODE GitHub and you download the EVERNODE software. And I'm not demonstrating the mechanism by which you go and acquire your Linux machine with its Ubuntu all uploaded, etc. That's part of the inevitable tech smarts that you need to be able to do this. But this is, we're just going to play this and let you step through the process of what would happen if you tried to become an EVERNODE host, right, at double speed. So we've got our machine set up. We go to the GitHub. Now I'll just pause it there. There's an EVERNODE software license that is part of the process of this particular piece of software. The EVERNODE hooks that are on Xahau are all open source, but we're not open sourcing the EVERNODE hosting software. The reason for that initially is that this is the secret source. If we open source this, then you just pick it up and move it and have your own EVERNODE network somewhere else, and you know that's not how we want this to work. So we will close source this and subject it to a license until the EVERNODE community gets a necessary gravity that it can become self-sustaining, even if this software is open source. So assuming that you agree with the software, we're asking whether you're performing a fresh installation or not, going through, looking at your machine, making sure it's got the necessary parameters for you to become a host. You've got to specify an email address. You've got to give it a domain name so that people are able to identify you on the network. Then it's going to go through this little bit, stepped over this very quickly. We automatically set up the SSL certificate for you. So there's this process. You go to this Let's Encrypt. That's one of the reasons why you need domain name, email address, so that we can make use of this automated process so that it's as easy as possible for you to have an SSL certificate for your EVERNODE host. We ask if you want IPv6. We're not making it mandatory at this time, but we highly recommend it. At this point down here, what the system's doing is, what the software is doing is looking at your machine and making some assessment based upon its resources as to how to slice the machine up into slots. So what this software does is take your host and create slots into which people can upload their instances of their DApp. And so we're simply looking at how beefy your machine is, and therefore how many contract instances it might reasonably support, and doing that automatically for you. At this point, we are creating the Xahau account for the host. So we're doing that automatically, right? Instead of forcing you to already have an account and go through and enter it and do all that sort of stuff, we're creating the account as part of this process. One of the reasons we do this is so that up here, the secret key that goes with that account is not leaving the machine. It's always on the machine. You're not having to enter it or do other sort of funny things with it. Here we're asking that you have necessary assets on deposit in the account, 17.6 Xahau to cover regular transaction fees, and 500 EVERs. So the 500 EVERs is for your registration expense. This 17.6 Xahau, because we live on the Xahau network, at regular points, you're having to send transactions to the hooks that are on Xahau. You're sending what is called a heartbeat transaction, which is basically telling the hook, I'm alive, I'm alive. What's actually saying is, I'm alive, please send me my EVERs. I'm alive, please send me my EVERs. Those transactions, this is one of the things that people will have to adjust to on Xahau. Because Xahau has the hooks, and hooks are a form of smart contract, they're more expensive to poke a hook than it is to simply send an XRPL transaction. So XR, tiny fees, 0.0002 or whatever it is of an XRP for a transaction. That's not the case on Xahau. So what's happening here is, when you send your heartbeat to the hook and request it to send you EVERs, you have to pay for the hook to do the computation that says, yes, you are a host, and yes, you are entitled to EVERs, and here's your EVERs, right? And so that 17.6 is our estimate of what it would take to cover the first 3 months of fees. And you'll have to keep some sort of Xahau in your account in order to continue to fund the machine to be on the network to send the necessary transactions. Remembering that Xahau has this rebalancing mechanism. Xahau has a function whereby every month you can send it a request for a balance adjustment, which is effectively a form of staking reward. If you've got a Xahau in your account, it will send you the annual equivalent of 4% back as a balance adjustment. What that means is that if you've got sufficient Xahau on deposit in your account, that 4% will actually cover your transaction fees over the course of the year, and you can simply ask for it to rebalance your account and send you 4% annual turned into a monthly figure in order to amortize the cost of running a node. It's one of the adjustments that's necessary for a system that has smart contracts that are more expensive than normal transactions, but it burns the fees rather than redistributes them. So Ethereum and others, they take the fees and they redistribute that to the network. XRPL-based accounts or Ripple D-based chains burn their gas token. So what Xahau is doing here is giving you an option of saying, if you've got enough on deposit, you can actually reclaim a balance adjustment that will equal what you've spent in network fees. And I make that point because obviously 17.6 Xahau for 3 months worth of transactions, there's not many people in the XRP ecosystem who would be used to spending that much of their XRP on transaction fees. In fact, they would think that's quite expensive, but that's the cost of using a network that has smart contract functionality. So you need these things on deposit in order to set up your account to be able to fund your participation in the network. The software is now checking that all of those conditions are met. And I imagine what's happening here is the person who's recording this video is going off and depositing those things into that account. It sets up the EVERS trust line for you. Whoop. This little bit. I don't know what's that doing. All right, what it's doing here is auto update service. So during the beta, we have provided a function where updates to the EVERNODE hosting software are automatically uploaded to the participating hosts. In production, we obviously can't just automatically upload to people's hosts. And so we do provide an auto update function or auto update service, which is subject to the terms and conditions of the EVERNODE license. if you're a host, you can decide that for your own ease that you would like any updates that we make to the EVERNODE software to be auto-updated to your host. But if you're a serious host, you might say no and want to be able to investigate each update before you allow it to go up to your machine. In this case, we've disabled it. Okay, all of that is preparation to the installation. Now we're installing the EVERNODE software onto the machine. And we're setting up Let's Encrypt, setting up the Docker packages. When it says created lease offer 1 of 6, it's going through the process of how the lease offer system works. We create lease NFTs. Each NFT is for a slot in the host, and those NFTs are offered for sale on the Xahau network. And the entity that acquires that lease NFT has the right to upload an instance of code to that particular slot for as long as they hold the lease NFT and continue to pay the nominated fee. We now need, you're registered on the network. In order to confirm all of that, we need to log out and log back in so that everything restarts. And that's it, we're done. We now have an EVERNODE host. It's technical, but it's not complicated, like it's not hard to do. And the team's done quite a reasonable job of making it as simple as possible to do, which is, that's been very good of them to do that. To earn network rewards, you've got to send a heartbeat every hour. And if you don't send the heartbeat, you're inactive. And if you're inactive, you don't earn rewards for that hour. So you miss out on rewards. There's the stick, which is that 80% of hosts can vote to deregister bad actors by forcibly redeeming their registration NFT. So if the community starts to notice that someone is a bad actor, fraudulent, or there's no test to that, in the sense that it's simply, if 80% of people running hosts form the view that you shouldn't be a member of the network, they can, through the governance game, vote to vote you out of the network. That kind of social control is necessary because there's all kinds of ways that someone might not be a good host that you can't police in automated software. There's the bigger stick, which is that anyone can send a prune message to the registration hook, and in response, it will unilaterally redeem or burn the registration NFT of a host that's not sent a heartbeat for the last 10 consecutive days. So if you're just offline for 10 days, then you are a host who can be pruned if someone sends a message to the hook. Basically, it says, prune everyone who's been inactive for 10 days or more. And hey, presto, their registration will get redeemed. If your registration is redeemed, the game theory involved in that is that the EVERs that you've put on deposit, you'll get half of those back. And the other half of the EVErs you've put on deposit will go into the rewards pool to be distributed to others later. And then finally, we're going to have auditors. We've got a reputation score built into the hook, which is there as a kind of as a useful thing to build on in the future, we think. But you can have people audit particular hosts, go and upload a contract to it. Yes, this host accepted a contract, etc. Therefore, it's a good host. So we will incentivize through bounties the existence of like audit type services. So you can imagine that in this kind of ecosystem, we think there's the potential for a market to exist for people who rate hosts. because what dApps will want is some sort of way of identifying good hosts, and therefore, you know, in the same way that we've got like XRPL forensics and people like that who keep track of bad actors in the you know, this is a tainted address, this is a scammer, all that sort of stuff. We imagine that there would exist a market for people to say, here's all the good hosts, this is not a good host, it's probably a scam host. You know, people who would spend that sort of time and effort, and we will incentivize the existence of that market through bounties. Now with Xamarin launching its new update, that process of interacting with Xahau, going onto the DEX, buying and selling tokens on the Xahau network, well, now you can get the EVERs that you need. And interestingly, I don't know if you noticed, but on the Xamarin update, the tokens that are available to set a trust line for, there's EVERs from EVERNODE, and then there's 3 tokens from GateHub that are going to be on the Xahau network. So there's a Euro stablecoin, USD stablecoin, and what is effectively an XRP IOU. So you'll actually be able to buy EVERs with XRP, because you'll be able to do that via GateHub's IOU. So GateHub is performing this a kind of bridge-like function between the two networks. You can use your XRP that's on the XRP ledger and transfer that to an XRP IOU on Xahau via GateHub through their issued currencies. So, you know, this is the beginnings of people being able to experience what it's like to have a multi-chain ecosystem in the XRPL space, which is something that the EVM-based people have had for many years now.
How come I don't see those stable coins? And
so go to add.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you on Xahau?
I see it now.
There it is, GateHub. You click on GateHub and you'll see the 3.
I see it.
And with your gifted Xahau, you can set, there's enough Xahau to set trust lines for all of those stable coins, for all of those GateHub options.
Yay! Good. Great.
Now you're good to go.
Good. Awesome. Yeah, Euro, dollar,
Yeah, it's fantastic.
XRP, and EVERNODE.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, amazing.
And then that means there's Xahau back on. If you go back to the XRP ledger and go to add tokens, you'll see that one of GateHub's options is Xahau. It's an ecosystem. Finally. And this is what we meant when we said exchanges are the best form of bridge.
Yeah, this is the best kind of bridge. Yay. I just put the US dollars in my Xamarin. The trust line. Woo! Awesome. Very cool.
So brave new world. Brave new world. Okay, so that's an overview of what it looks like to become a host. And we're going to touch base with Eri again on the 17th of January, 2 days after our launch. And hope you join us again then. We'll talk a little bit about the launch process and how it all went. But we also then want to talk about the next most important thing after getting lots of hosts, which is getting lots of devs. And so we'll look at the sorts of things that you can build on EVERNODE, and talk a little bit about the codeathon that is coming up as part of the XRPL conference on the Gold Coast. Okay.